Hello and welcome to this next video, number 17 in my World War II series and number 5 in my Golden Oldie series. Don't forget to check out my other series, Bush Strips in Microsoft Flight Simulator. This time we look at Eddb, Tempelhof Airport in Berlin, Germany. Here's a current Google Earth view of Tempelhof. It opened in October 23 and was one of 3 iconic pre-World War II airports, the other 2 being London Croydon and Paris Le Bourget. Since its closure in 2008, Tempelhof has been used for recreation space, an emergency refugee camp and other miscellaneous purposes. Its future is still somewhat unclear. When Tempelhof closed in 2008, joining the ranks of so many abandoned airfields around Berlin, it left Tegel and Schönefeld as the 2 main airports for Berlin at the time. But then Tegel closed in 2020, joining the ranks of the abandoned, and the new Berlin Brandenburg, incorporating the old Schönefeld, opened in October 2020. These 2 Cold War era maps show several abandoned World War II strips north and south of Berlin in brown colour. Even some of the blue Cold War strips have now also been abandoned. Researching and landing on some of the many abandoned strips can be quite interesting and haunting, so maybe a video for another day. Even before Tempelhof opened in 1923, the area was used for airships and other airborne activities. Here we see Orville Wright of Wright Brothers fame demonstrating their aircraft, complete with launching mechanism, as early as 1909. The name Tempelhof, by the way, was derived from the area being Knights Templar land in medieval Berlin. The original terminal building shown here was built in 1927. It was the world's first airport terminal with an underground railway. It included dining areas inside and out and observation areas at ground level and on the roof. At times, like most airports in the 1920s and 30s, it was very, very popular indeed, as you can see here. The Nazis replaced the original terminal with a rather different structure in the 1930s. At the time, it was the largest building in the world, beaten later by the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., USA. It had 2 major distinctive features. It was shaped like an eagle, with hangars arranged in 2 long curved wings spreading out from a central core consisting of a terminal central hall and other associated buildings. It also had a huge canopy style roof extending over the apron for aircraft to park under. Again, a world's first. During World War II, Tempelhof was not used for fighting but for manufacture of aircraft for the war. From 1940 to 45, over 5,000 Stuka dive bombers were made there. Focke-Wulf fighter aircraft were also assembled there. Aircraft parts and complete engines were brought in from elsewhere in Germany, and once the airframes were complete and the engines installed, the aircraft were flown out. At least half of the approximately 4,000 workers were forced slave labourers. The airport survived the war largely intact. The Russians had it for a few weeks after the war ended before they handed it over to the Americans, but not before they ransacked it and managed to accidentally set fire to part of it. After the war, it became the centre of the famous Berlin Airlift 1948 to 49, called Operation Vittles. This picture shows Berlin city, with the black area outside and all around Berlin being under Russian control at the time. In June 48, the Russians blocked all land and water traffic into Allied controlled West Berlin, hoping to take over West Berlin from the Allies. Only 3 air corridors remained open, although the Russians tried unsuccessfully to block those as well. Rather than abandon the city, the Allies decided to supply the city by air, probably for political Cold War reasons as much as humanitarian aid, I think. Over the 15-month-long Russian blockade, the Allies flew into West Berlin over 270,000 times, using about 700 aircraft of many different varieties, but mainly the famous Douglas C-47s as shown here, and the larger C-54s, carrying necessities such as food and fuel. At its peak, one aircraft landed at Tempelhof every 30 seconds. Unfortunately, 25 Allied aircraft crashed and 101 personnel died from flying and non-flying accidents. Total cost of the Berlin airlift was around $4 billion in today's money. The grass runways at Tempelhof could not cope with the huge demand, nor could a runway constructed with the famous perforated steel planks called Marston matting, used extensively during World War II. So the Americans built two new paved runways in mid to late 1948. Other airports were also used during the Berlin airlift, but Tempelhof was the main one. The embarrassed Russians finally gave up and lifted the blockade. The main Berlin airlift was called Operation Vittles, as mentioned before. There was also Operation Little Vittles, which was the famous associated dropping of candy on little parachutes from the landing aircraft to the German children below, gathered at the edge of Tempelhof Airport. Now let's go flying in the sim. Here's our flight plan for the trip, starting at Eddb Tempelhof in the middle, up north to see some World War II and other sites in Berlin City, then northwest for a quick look at recently closed Tegel Airport, back down south to the site of the 1936 Olympics and Teufelsberg World War II Cold War spy site, southeast to overfly Berlin's brand new Seoul International Airport, Eddb Brandenburg, and finally return to Tempelhof. I should mention there is great freeway scenery for Berlin City, Tempelhof and other Berlin airports available from flightsim.to. You really need to get these if you want to do this flight yourself. By the way, ever thought about the difference between Berg with an E and Berg with a U at the end of many German words? Teufelsberg with an E and Brandenburg with a G, for example? Well, it gets complicated, but if you think of the E for mountains and the U for buildings, you won't go too far wrong. Well, here we are in the sim in the twin-engined Diamond DA62 with snazzy livery, ready to take off to the east on runway 09 left from Tempelhof. The runways are actually closed to aircraft, hence the big yellow crosses, because it's now a park, but I got special permission. Gear up and flaps up. Nice view of Tempelhof behind, with the huge Nazi-built terminal and hangars on the right. Autopilot engaged. Turning back to the west, you can see the huge Nazi building on the left, shaped like an eagle, with the central core of buildings, including the main terminal, and two long curved buildings like eagle's wings for the aircraft hangars. To the right of the central core is a memorial to the Berlin airlift, and we'll look at that airlift later on. Turning north towards Berlin City now. First is Goering's World War II Ministry of Aviation building, largely undamaged during the war, and now the Finance Ministry. There it is, passing under the left engine of the aircraft, four sort of square buildings joined together. See the red and blue sports stadium coming up just off the left wingtip. Just to the right of that is a car park, and that's where Hitler's final underground bunker was. Next along from that is the Holocaust Memorial, that big grey patch consisting of around 2,700 concrete blocks up to 4.7 metres high. There's the famous Brandenburg Gate on the left and the domed Reichstag Parliament building passing under the aircraft now. Next up is the famous Tiergarten Park, I guess Berlin's equivalent to New York's Central Park, and there in the roundabout is the Victory Column Memorial to Prussian successors in some late 1800 wars. A quick overfly of Tegel Airport coming up. Tegel was Berlin's main international airport until its closure in 2020 in favour of the new Berlin Brandenburg, which we'll be looking at soon. Unlike the very many abandoned airfields around Berlin, there are plans for Tegel. The buildings are to be retained and the area is to become a high-tech scientific and industrial research project. Let's hope it goes ahead, eh? Tegel was not a World War II airfield. It opened at the beginning of the Cold War in 1948 to help with the Berlin Airlift. This is default scenery, by the way, not too bad. No freeware or payware here. Soon we'll turn to the west to overfly the site of the 1936 Olympics hosted by Hitler, and there it is, not just the main oval shaped building but the whole area and infrastructure around it. These were the games where Hitler, although debated to this day, snubbed the black American Jesse Owens, who was the most successful athlete at the games, winning 4 gold medals. Now we overfly Teufelsberg, or Devil's Mountain, just off the right wing, a man-made hill of rubble from bombed World War II Berlin. It's one of several such hills, but it's special because it covers a military college designed by Nazi architect Albert Speer, and on top there is a now disused American Cold War electronic spying station, which you can see behind the aircraft now. The station is not depicted properly in the sim, so here's a picture of Teufelsberg, taken I think in 1985, shortly after the spy site was decommissioned. Now we'll overfly Eddb Berlin Brandenburg Airport, Berlin's brand new and now only international airport, south of Berlin City. The far side of the airport and the runway there is brand new, but the near side and the runway under the aircraft was the former Schoenfeld Airport. Schoenfeld was opened by the Nazis in 1934, and during World War II was a major aircraft production factory. Over 14,000 aircraft were built there during the war. After the war, Russia occupied and developed it until German reunification in 1990. It was then further developed to become Berlin's second most important international airport after Tegel. Schoenfeld has now been subsumed within the brand new Berlin Brandenburg Airport. There's a nice view of Berlin Brandenburg looking back. Returning now to Tempelhof, you can see how close to the city it is. Not sure why they don't make it a small airport and park, but anyway, that's up to the Germans. You can see also clearly how the eagle shape of the gigantic Nazi building, a central core of buildings and a huge wing either side. And there's the Berlin Airlift Memorial again, just beyond the central core of buildings. As well as the eagle shape of the building, it would be remiss of me not to show you the other main feature of the building. That is the huge overhanging roof under which whole aircraft at the time could park. So huge in fact that I reckon I could fly under it. Quite unbelievable, this building. Now watch these flying skills. Look at that, remarkable construction. And now for a really illegal landing. Gear down, flaps down. Power back. Avoid stalling on a sharp turn. And just made it nicely. We'll cheat a bit and taxi across the grass just to make things a bit shorter, and we'll park amongst the blue coloured Spitfires. They are the clipped wing variety, which I do not prefer, but hey, a spit is a spit. Well, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Please consider liking and subscribing for weekly videos. And the next video will feature Alaska using the new high quality detailed mesh from developer Orbex. So long, thanks for watching, and cheers for now.